All right, so today we've got two items. I think these are the two items left that we haven't discussed in great detail yet that we're hoping to do work on in 13.2. So the first one is active response options. Let me pull that up and share my screen. So thank you, Alan, for your comments asynchronously ahead of time. I really appreciate that to get some clarity around what is offered natively with Tomko Sidekick and what we would have to add as an extension. Based off of that information that Alan provided, I modified the requirements here to de-scope it and focus just on what's available within Tomko Sidekick today. So the ability to send a Slack message, send an email, and send a message out via syslog. I created a separate epic that will prioritize and work on separately to handle some of these other actions that we want to have. But I wanted to keep this one small and make sure it could stay within the scope of a single iteration. So really the main focus here is just, embedding Tomko Sidekick and, providing a way to install it the same as you would like Falco or Cilium or any of other products today. Are there any questions on this one? I feel like it's fairly straightforward, but I could be wrong.
Where is the, I have one question. Where is the Slack configuration coming from?
I'd like to recommend we use callbacks. Webhooks. That works for Slack and many, many other systems. So we would maybe do it via webhook, where we call a webhook that the user provides, which is basically a URL you hit. And Slack has integration with webhooks, and many other systems do too. So we document how to do it in Slack, but that would actually open it up so many systems can get messages from us. But that's just my thought. What does everybody else think?
Yeah, I mean, another angle on that question is of where do they configure it? I would, because that's kind of focused on the how. I would expect that it would be in a YAML file that they add to their repo, pretty much like the same way they configure everything else. And so, whether that's via a webhook or otherwise, I would expect that configuration to fall in a YAML file where they would be able to specify, what actions they want to have taken, out of these three options, and when those actions occur. In the case of kind of this de-scoped one, it would be, what priority or what threshold level of a Falco rule would cause those actions to be taken.
So I'm raising that because we already have a Slack notification service in the project settings. So that would be confusing, I guess, for the users to have that configured and not receiving any notification and have to update a YAML file on the side as well. That's why I'm raising that.
Yeah, that's
here in webhooks, or is it in integrations? It might be in integrations. Right.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Yep. Yeah, it's in settings, integrations, Slack notifications.
It is, yeah, it is part of integration.
Push them. That's a good point. I was not aware of this ahead of time. Looks like they do have an option here for a webhook. I mean, I want to keep this minimal, but that is a good point. Like, there is a lot of overlap between this integrations page and some of these other things that we're doing. Jira as well, they've got a line item here, and even, our original designs for how to output the syslog or to SIM involved adding a line item here in this list of integrations. So I'm wondering if we're starting to create tech debt for ourselves where, we're going to want to go back and use these settings at the project level later, rather than configuring them, multiple times or configuring them down at the cluster level. Yeah,
I agree. The first MVC could be a YAML file, and I just want to make sure that you have that in mind, that we have these kind of settings in the project.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out. I think we'll defer. I think we'll wait to do anything related to these integrations and just keep them separate for now. But yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out. I think we're going to want to consider a follow-up of, like, you know, how do we align these two with everything that we're doing so that we don't have duplicate places to configure Slack, for example.
The people getting these might be different personas. It's probably already thought about this, but the people getting these notifications would often be different personas than the people who are getting, you know, the other types of things that are listed on that page, perhaps. These are people that be getting these are folks who are tasked with responding to security alerts. Security folks, CISO folks, versus
Right.
versus developers, you know, who want to be notified of a merge request or an issue being filed, or, you know, et cetera. There's some overlap, I'm sure.
Yeah, so while that's true, their instance of Slack and the configuration to send data to Slack is likely to be the same. Now, you know, which user in Slack that it gets sent to is going to be different, or, you know, the rules of when to send the Slack message is going to be specific for the security team, but it's likely that there's just one, you know, instance of Slack for the organization that they want to send things to, rather than a separate instance.
And just to be clear,
but that can be a follow-up epic.
Yeah, just to be clear on that, the integration, the Slack integration that we have, you can set a different channel based on the events that you receive. For example, you can have a channel that is specific for this kind of events that would be used by certain persona. You can have a different channel for push, or when an issue is created, it's configurable in that page.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've got the flexibility we need there. Zamir, Tiago isn't here, but I'm assuming that you're going to be the one running point on this. Are you comfortable moving this out of planning breakdown and into refinement, or do you have any additional questions or clarification around the requirements here?
No, I think the requirements are fine. I just need to catch up a little bit with what Alan has done with the Focus so far. I was doing the App Armor side of things, so that's the only thing.
Okay. That sounds great. Either you or Tiago, I'll reach out to Tiago and see what he wants to do, but we'll get a implementation issue created for this one and move it to refinement, and then I'll close out the design issue. All right, so the last one that we have in our list is plans for create, edit, and delete policy. So this one is still not 100% finalized, but we are getting very close, I believe. So I've got some mocks here that Andy helped put together. He was not able to make the meeting today, so I'm just going to show them on his behalf. But you know, this is the policy management interface that Arthur's been working on. So you go into threat monitoring, and then policies, the policies tab, and you get a list. Right now, it's only civilian policies. We'll add more to this list later on. And the idea is you'll click on this, you'll get, you know, a description, you know, the enable disable state that's there today, but then we'll also give you a new section here that has both two tabs here, rule and YAML. So if you want to see a preview of the raw YAML file, you can do that, or you can click rule and see the text here as sort of a summary of how it works. And then you can go ahead and click edit policy or new policy. And when you click that, I created a small prototype here because there are a lot of different permutations of how things can work out. And I felt like it was a lot easier to just give, you know, a working prototype that helped answer all of the questions rather than try to describe it all in text. Right now, there are a few drop downs that can't be changed because we only have civilian policies in here. So right now this says runtime container policy. That's your only option. You can't change that. Future policy types might be things like scanning policies or scanning configurations. This could be like scans before production. for the secure scanners, or scans in production for things like scanning for malware or scanning for vulnerabilities that we've talked about adding to container host security. So there would be other types of policies here, but this runtime container policy in the future would include not only Cilium, but also things like mod security policy, Falco policy, AppArmor policy, Falco Sidekick policy would sort of all fall under that umbrella, where you could configure any of those items in that bucket of things. So then you fill out a name, test policy, a description, you pick which environments you want this to apply to. And I know with Cilium, it only gets applied to one environment at a time. So you're going to have to do some kind of magic on the back end to duplicate the policy out and apply it out to each environment that they pick. Enabled or disabled, and then rule mode or YAML mode. So YAML mode is our fallback. YAML mode is really, where they just get a free form text editor and they can go ahead and type anything they want into this YAML file. So that lets them use the full scope and breadth and depth of Cilium policies. They can do layer 7 filtering. They can make this policy as complex as they want to, and customize and tweak it exactly the way they need it to work. In rule mode, there are some limitations because we are approaching this in an iterative fashion. We're not going to have support for everything, every type of Cilium policy on day one. And so if for any reason they come in here and they type, either they just type gibberish, or it's a bad YAML file that's poorly formatted, or they've included like layer 7 filtering that's not supported yet in rule mode, whatever the reason is, if we can't parse that file, then we'll just go to an error state when they click on rule mode and say, sorry, we can't parse your YAML file. You have to go edit it in YAML mode before we can read it. It'll still work. It'll still get deployed down to the cluster, but you won't be able to use this UI. So assuming they're either starting from scratch or we're able to parse the YAML file out okay, they can come in here and click new rule. Because you have a network traffic rule, you automatically have to have an action that says either allow or block. The way Cilium works is it blocks everything. Once you have one policy on an endpoint, it then blocks all traffic except for the policy that's allowed, except for the traffic that's allowed by that policy. So it's basically an allow list model where you're building out policies that allow traffic rather than block traffic. So this dropdown is not editable. This dropdown is also not editable today, although we'll want to extend this in the future to add things that Falco can cover, things like if a process is started, or, if a shell is spawned, or if, a configuration file is changed, so that, we can basically combine Cilium and Falco rules, and AppArmor and, all of those technologies together here. So you can have this big statement that says, if this and this and this happen, then I want a Slack message. I don't want it if just something happens in Cilium, but, give me a time frame. If within 10 minutes of time, I see this in Falco and this in Cilium and this in mod security, that's interesting to me. So there's plans to extend this in the future. And I'm sorry, I'm bouncing between like the future vision and the, short-term implementation state here. But for now, it'll be limited to just network traffic. And then you can change this inbound or outbound. And basically in here, you can configure any number of key different configurations. I think I've designed it for most all of the layer 3 and layer 4 policies, except for DNS. So we have a pretty good set of options there that come out of the box. And as you can see, I'm auto-generating what that'll look like here in the YAML file. And I'm also, if I switch over to rule here, generating a sentence that basically explains in plain English what that policy is going to do once you deploy it, so that it removes a lot of the confusion out from it and makes it simpler for a new user to come in and get started using Cilium rather than just having to go edit the YAML file directly. I consider pretty much everything in this rule mode as a stretch goal for 13.2. If we can start with just letting them edit the YAML file, then that's really where we want to start, because they can do everything in here. And then we can work on this rule mode and iterate as we go to get towards this vision and even further afterwards. So that being said, are there any questions about this design or about the epic to allow for creating, editing, and deleting policy?
I just have a question about the parsing. When you click, so the parsing that we are going to do is between the YAML mode and the rule mode, right? We are not checking the YAML against the Kubernetes specification.
Correct. Yep. So, they're going to have a YAML file that's deployed into their cluster. Right now we're reading that in and displaying that. That's the work that Arthur's been doing in 13.1. But we'll take that YAML file and we'll try to parse it out and see if we can understand it and put it into this rule mode. If we can, then great. We'll let them edit it here. If for any reason at all, like that parsing fails, it could be a valid specification and just have a field that we don't yet support. It could just be gibberish YAML. Like there's a lot of reasons why it could fail, but if it fails for any reason, I don't have a mock for that now, but we'll just, you won't have this editing experience. It'll just give you an error message and tell you to go fix it.
Okay.
In general, I know Andy's not on, but this is I know this takes a lot of effort versus, just a layout that's static, but this is great for people to kind of play with and really get a feel for a new UI. This is hats off to Andy on this. This is awesome.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a huge differentiator for us in the space. As far as I can tell, no one else has this kind of a policy editor, and especially a policy editor that lets you span multiple technologies. So when you come in here in this mode, it doesn't feel like you're creating a Cilium policy. You're just telling it what you want to do. And then we farm that out to the technologies that need to take the actions. So I'm really excited for this. And again, I think this is going to give us a huge leg up on the competitors that are in this space.
Yeah, I agree. I guess what I was saying is just the way that Andy put this together, not the specific, this specific feature, but just this live, clickable user interface as a way to describe what we want to build is, I know it takes a lot of effort for Andy, but it really helps people to get their head around what the UI should look like when we actually implement it. But I agree with everything you said too, sir.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I actually built this out. Andy provided the mocks, and then I turned it into the live prototype.
Oh, neat. What tool did you use to do that?
Say that again?
What tool did you use to put together the live prototype?
Visual Studio and HTML.
Neat.
So it's just a basic HTML, JavaScript, CSS front end only app. So a lot of smoke and mirrors.
The net result is very useful.
All right. So I think we just have 5 minutes left. Are there any other items to discuss today?
We jumped past 2, 3, and 4 because there wasn't anything in there. So no follow-up from previous discussions. Nobody has anything new to demo. Any questions or concerns from the group we want to discuss?
I had a question. I'm highlighting a link in the doc. I think it's the wrong link here. No? Oh, that's the mockup. The mockups that you are actually sharing, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, that's why.
That's what we reviewed.
Do we have in the issue, because I don't have a link to the issue right there, because we only saw the part when you can create a new policy, but is there anything with regards to where you can list the policies or edit the policies, delete the policies, everything CRUD with regards to the policies? Just want to make sure that we have that before we start.
Yeah, you can look at the full requirements here. I'll add the link in.
Sweet. Thanks.
We're already doing view is already in progress. In fact, I think Arthur's pretty much finished that. So, you know, viewing is done, as is totally disabled. So this just covers creating, editing, and deleting. And again, the mocks are not 100% done. So the answer would be no, like we don't have mocks for the workflow for deleting yet, and we need to get some more error states. But as I mentioned, we're getting close, and I wanted to share what we had now, even though it's not 100% done. This is a big one design-wise, so I know we're going to be running up towards the end of this iteration to have everything ready, but I'm hoping that we have enough that, you know, we can at least get a start on it in 13.2, even if, you know, it's kind of a just-in-time model where we'll get, you know, the designs just in time for the engineers doing the work.
Okay, thanks.
So with 2 minutes left, if no one else has anything, I think I'll just give a quick overview of our plans here, so that we're on the same page. So we had a lot in 13.1. It's been a really great release. I think, you know, this is a huge iteration for us. We got a ton done. 13.2, so we're going to be doing that active response that we just talked about, create, edit, delete policy, and out-of-the-box policy set for Cilium. So those will be a little bit disjointed the way we have things now, because we have design issues in the milestone before, and then implementation issues in the milestone of. So you know, to figure out what's coming in 13.2, you kind of have to look across 2 columns now. But we'll have those 3 items for 13.2. After 13.2, I plan to put a pause on the policy management work. Not that it's not good. It is, you know, very important for us, but we have a good base there. You know, once we have create, edit, and delete, we'll have a good foundation there that we can pause that. And we're going to start working on providing an alert dashboard, where you can go and see alerts that have come through the system. And again, since we have just a little bit of extra time, I can give you just a rough concept of what that might look like. So we have a similar parallel today in operations alerts. This is for a different persona. These are alerts about like the performance of your cluster that have had problems. But a lot of these principles are the same, and we'll likely end up reusing some of these design, you know, some of this design as well, if not all of it, where you get basically a list of alerts that have come in. There's a severity associated with them. You know, there's a count, so you're rolling things up and aggregating any duplicates. You can put a status on them. You can dive in and view details and then take action. So, you know, create an issue, or if an issue has already been created, you can view the issue. You should be able to assign these out to people, but having some kind of an alert dashboard where, you know, this would not be everything that's captured in the logs, because that was just overwhelming and spammy. You know, the assumption is that users would tailor a list of things that they actually care about, you know, things that are truly alerting to them that, you know, and again, it may be a combination of things. Like if I see a process started and I see a network port open, you know, and I see attempted communication between pods in Cilium, you know, so it could be a combination of things that contribute to these alerts. But then that's concerning to me, and I want to actually go investigate that more. So, you know, starting in 13.3, our plan is to shift our focus to building out this alert dashboard. At least, you know, so that'll be one leg of the work, and then the other leg of the work for 13.3 will be rounding out what we've done with Falco, you know, up until 13.1 and 13.2, we're kind of just adding a bunch of technologies in. We're going to want to put a pause on adding new technologies there and go back and do some of the other foundational things that we've done for the other technologies, like giving it an on and off switch in the UI, exporting the logs out to syslog, and adding something to I'm spacing on the name, the statistics page, basically adding, container host security statistics. So that's, just sort of a preview of what I have planned for 13.2 and even 13.3.
Great stuff planned.
Some quick question. I believe you saw them.
Hey, Alan, your audio
hear
is,
you.
I don't know how to describe it. You sound a little bit like Max Headroom from the 80s.
Scrambled, yeah.
Yeah, can you say that again?
1, 2, 3.
Or maybe
better.
send it in chat.
No, okay.
Oh, we can hear you now, Alan. Go ahead.
No, that's clear.
There we go.
As always. All right. About NMR for Falco, we have a ping pong with maintainers. We are undecided what to do actually. If we're gonna stay with the name that we've decided, I mean, GitLab Container Security, or like host security, or are we gonna revert that to Falco only? I'm just curious what we want to do now, because I know David was involved. I'm just not sure.
We're losing your audio again, Alan.
Yeah, I'm losing your audio there at the end, but the only reason I have an opinion on that at all is simply because we don't want to bind ourselves to 3 years of support. Otherwise, I would not care at all what we have in the back end and the text file. So I just want to make that super clear. Like, that is the only reason that I'm getting involved in this one at all. What David posted most recently is that we should just go with the assumption that it's 1 year or less of, an obligation that we're binding ourselves to support. So I'm much more comfortable with that. I have not had a chance yet this morning since I got in to post on the MR, but if we're going with the assumption that it's a year or less, that's a lot less concerning to me, and I'm okay with using the term Falco in that case, because if we have to support Falco for a year, that's not great, but it's okay. If it was 3 years, then that's just, too much. So I'll post on that MR so that it's there, for everyone to see, but I'm okay with us going with Falco.
Thank you.
Unless we come back and find out that it actually is 3 years, and then I'll push for us to change it again.
We are at time. Great discussion today. See you, everybody. And I'll post the recording.
Yeah, and I wonder how your AI thing is going to interpret
We shall
talents.
see. Cheers.
Thanks.